Hello, my name is Ethan Schultz. I'm currently a junior at Colorado State University. Today I'm going to discuss why nuclear energy is a viable alternative resource to fossil fuels. First, before I get into nuclear energy, I'm going to explain why renewable resources are important. It's relatively common knowledge that fossil fuels are a leading cause of global warming and global pollution. Since their adoption in the early Industrial Revolution, ocean acidification levels have increased by 30%. Not even taking into account global warming and pollution, we're expected to run out by fossil fuels by 2090, and we need to find resources before we can't sustain ourselves. Now, during this presentation, I'm first going to explain how nuclear energy is the most efficient renewable. Second, I'm going to explain how nuclear energy can make other renewable energy sources even more clean. And last, I'm going to explain how new reactor technologies are being developed that limit the chance of reactor meltdowns. So why is nuclear the best renewable option? In this figure, it shows all energy sources, both renewable and non-renewable, and their capacity factors. A capacity factor is a proportion of an energy source's actual output compared to its theoretical output. Now, nuclear energy has the highest capacity factor at 92.5%. And this is largely so high because it's not very dependent on weather conditions, such as wind and solar, which depend on both wind and sunlight. Next, I'm going to explain how nuclear energy can make other renewables even more clean by more specifically examining the case study of hydrogen production. Now, hydrogen is an element that's making the semiconductor, synthetic fuel, and power cell industry even more clean. One downside to hydrogen production, or at least raw hydrogen production, is that it's extremely carbon dioxide intensive. It generates 830 million tons of carbon dioxide yearly. So the question is, how do we make that more clean? A study was done, and it shows that if nuclear energy powered just 4% of hydrogen production, then 60 million tons of carbon dioxide would not be put into the atmosphere. So if that percentage were increased, or if hydrogen production were entirely powered by nuclear energy, then we'd be able to stop putting in millions of tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere yearly. Now, last, I'm going to explain new reactor technologies and how they're safer. Since 1950, there have been 10 partial or full reactor meltdowns, and the most famous of which occurred in Chernobyl, Ukraine in 1986. It rendered 1,000 square miles completely unlivable. Largely in response, in the early 2000s, the global community created the Generation 4 Reactor Research Initiative, which seeks to make safer and more well-developed nuclear reactors. One of the technologies developed by this initiative is the molten salt reactor, and it uses salt coolant instead of water coolant in nuclear reactors, basically ensuring that the coolant, what keeps nuclear reactors cool, doesn't evaporate. In summary of this presentation, first we went over why nuclear energy is the most renewable energy source. Second, we went over how nuclear energy can reduce other renewables' CO2 footprint. And third, we reviewed how new reactor technologies are making nuclear reactors safer. So now that we can see why nuclear energy is a viable alternative to fossil fuels, there's a couple things we can do. Actually, one main thing we can do. A lot of nuclear policies are adopted and voted on at the state level, meaning that individuals can vote on policies or they can vote in representatives that vote on reactor policies. So to put in the most work and ensure that these technologies are adopted, we can do a lot of research on nuclear power and new nuclear power laws and ensure we're voting in the right people and voting on the right policies. Thank you very much for listening.